Hi, and welcome to the Caterpillar Cross Stitch YouTube channel. My name is Ford, and last week I showed you how to make a custom cross-stitched Pokemon card for display. I mentioned in the video that I had made my own pattern, and I had a number of questions from people about how that's done. So I decided to make some videos on the topic. And as I started thinking about it, I realized that there are some lessons that either someone teaches you or that you learn the hard way as you set out into making your own patterns. So whether you're just going to make a small motif that you draw by hand or a large full coverage pattern that you make in specialized software, these are the top lessons that I wish I had known before I made my first pattern. I'm just going to jump right into the topic. If you promise to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave me a comment, and if you already subscribed, find and hit that hype button if you're on your mobile phone. So the first thing that I wish I had known before I started out is to start from the size of my finish and work backwards from there. Rather than starting out with just an arbitrary size of canvas and drawing all my stitches on there, and then hoping that when it's done it'll fit in a frame or in a hoop or however I want to display it, I found it's much easier if I start from the size that I need it to be when I'm done and work my way backwards from there. And if I can't make it work in the number of pixels that it allows me, I can then change my frame size or change my fabric count in order to give myself more space to work with. But for instance, I frequently like to make patterns that are fairly small. So I'll start with a 5x7 picture frame and 14 count Ada, and I'll do the math to see how many stitches that is, and then work my way backwards from there. More on that in a minute with a very important caveat. But for instance, with my Pokemon card cross-stitch pattern for this project that I taught you about last week, I started out by taking a Pokemon card and measuring the size of the picture box. And I realized that it was just a shade over 2 inches wide. Now, because of the limitations of my material and knowing that if I tried to make my stitches any smaller than about 14 count Ada stitch density, it would tear through the cardboard, I knew I needed to work at 14 stitches per inch or fewer. So since I'm working with 2 inches of width, I knew that I needed to keep my pattern under 28 stitches wide. So the formula for that is dimension in inches times fabric count, which is how many stitches per inch the fabric will support, equals dimension in stitches. So I want to stay within 2 inch width, and I'm using 14 count. I knew I needed it to be less than 28 stitches wide. So that was the parameter that I started from when I created my grid to start designing my pattern. Now, I mentioned a bit of a caveat when it comes to frame sizes, and this is something that a lot of people who don't work in the print or photographic or visual graphics industry don't really know or understand, is that frames have a labeled size. That is what we would call their nominal size, the size after which the frame is named. So for instance, the shadow box into which I put my little Seadra card is sold as a 5x7 shadow box. It says it will fit a 5x7 picture. But the thing about a frame is that the frame opening needs to be a little bit smaller than the picture that you're going to put in it. Otherwise, the picture will just fall out. So you don't want any gapping around the edges of the frame of the display. So generally, the orifice of the frame is going to be a little bit smaller than its nominal size, its named size. So if we actually measure the opening of this 5x7 frame, you'll see that it is 4.5 by 6.5 inches. And that is very consistent across the industry. Generally, the overlap of the frame, how much of the graphic that you put in it it's going to cover, is about 1/4 inch, or about 6 millimeters on each side. So the total reduction in size will be double that, 1/2 inch, or about 12 millimeters. So if you're looking at a picture frame that is a 5x7 picture frame, your actual maximum dimensions of the stitch that you put in it will be 4.5 by 6.5 inches. So if we're going to work with 14 count Ada, if we do the math, I'll put it on the screen here, these are the actual maximum dimensions that we can work with. On more than one occasion, I decided what size frame I was going to use. I worked out how big that meant it needed to be. I designed my pattern. I started working on it. And then I got to the end and I realized that I had forgotten to deduct that extra space that the frame covers up. I used to manage a camera store. Like, I should know this, but I still screwed it up on multiple occasions. So then I had to get a bigger frame and in some cases even have a custom frame made. It's just a whole ordeal. So it's something to keep in mind when picking a frame size, that the actual stitch size has to be a little bit smaller than that. In most cases, about 1/2 inch or about 12 millimeters. And in a similar vein, it's worth noting that there isn't really a standard across the fiber arts industry as far as how we measure and how we label embroidery hoops. So if you're like me and you sometimes like to display your stitches in embroidery hoops, for instance, if you want to wrap the edges of it with some variegated floss to really kind of jazz it up, then it's worth noting that the actual size of the hoop might vary a little bit from manufacturer to manufacturer. So ostensibly, these are both 6-inch embroidery hoops. But if we compare their sizes, you can see that one of them, the display area on the inside, is quite a bit bigger. That looks to me somewhere around like 8 millimeters or like 3/8 of an inch. So you want to measure the actual hoop that you intend to use to display a piece when calculating the size of the circle that's going to fit in it. And you'll also want to bear in mind that only from the junction between the two rings of the hoop is going to be visible. This part's going to stay on the outside. So you want to measure from the junction between the inner ring and the outer ring, and that's how much of your fabric will actually be visible when you finish it. So I'm going to take just a second right now to remind you to join the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Stitch Club email newsletter. As soon as you sign up, you'll get 10 free PDF cross-stitch patterns worth £60, including a really cool year-long temperature tracker pattern, and you'll get up-to-date notifications about all of our upcoming projects, stitch-alongs, retreats, socials, all of that kind of stuff. So hit the link in the video description or down there in the first pinned comment in order to sign up. Now my next tip has to do with picking colors. I have this beautiful floss sample card from DMC, and I find it extremely handy when making patterns or working on color substitutions, any of that kind of stuff. And so this makes it really easy to look at the colors and see what they actually look like in the real world, because computer monitors and displays can be pretty unreliable. So for instance, if I search up DMC 703, this one is kind of neon looking. This one looks a little bit dark. This one's way oversaturated. This one's kind of undersaturated. Here it looks kind of sagey. So even just on the same display on my phone screen, these different things that are ostensibly 703 all look quite different. Cameras are interpreting the information that comes into them, and the camera and the photographer and the profiles that are set up on it make a huge difference as to how that color gets rendered in the picture, as does the calibration and the color space of your computer and your monitor, your phone, whatever you're looking at that picture on. So it can make it really difficult to know how a color is actually going to look if you're trying to pick it on a screen. Say, for instance, if you're using a web-based cross-stitch design software, you'll look at that little color square and it'll look good, but then when you actually pull that color out of your stash in order to stitch with it, it doesn't look anything like the way it was previewed. So it's best to pick your colors from swatches or from the actual skeins in your stash. Or if you're using a software like that and you've got a color that you like on it, rather than just trusting that it says, oh, that's $7.99. Take your stash or your swatch card and compare it to the colors that you're seeing on the screen and pick the colors that you want accordingly. I've seen some really unfortunate errors caused by people trusting those color previews on a computer screen. Another big tip is that when it comes to picking colors, the contrast that you see on your swatch card or in the skeins in your hand is not always going to be the same as the contrast that you see when you actually stitch those colors into a project. So one rule of thumb that I have developed is that unless I'm using 4 or 5 colors to make a really smooth color gradient, I never use adjacent colors from the card, or colors with consecutive numbers. So like 800, 809, 799, 798. Like 809 and 799 kind of look on the card like there's enough contrast that you'll be able to tell them apart in the project, but I've learned that it will become difficult to tell them apart. So I always make sure to go at least one step away. And sometimes that looks like too much contrast, but I trust this rule of thumb for myself and it has very, very rarely led me astray. So if you're only using 2 or 3 colors from a family, make sure that there is at least one tone step or one shade between the colors that you use, or they'll be too similar. Like I said, if you're using all 5 of them and you want that very subtle graduation, the fact that you won't be able to tell adjacent ones apart will be a feature rather than a bug. But if you're only using 2, say like 1 for the main color and 1 for the shade, or 3, like 1 for highlight, main color, and shade, you want to have at least one color between each of those steps, or they'll just blend together and won't be able to tell them apart. And I find that this is especially true in the redder colors, in the pinks and the reds. They blend together even more in our vision just because our eyes are not as sensitive or attuned to red colors. And my final tip is also having to do with colors, and that is that you should decide what color of fabric you are going to stitch on from the start. If you want to stitch on white fabric, if you wind up using a bunch of white floss in it, then those stitches are all just going to disappear. Or if you use very lightly colored floss, they're going to just disappear into the white fabric. So it's a good idea to decide what color, or at least like what color family of fabric you're going to be working on, so that you can choose your colors, and especially the colors that are around the outsides of your design, the ones that will be exposed to open unstitched fabric. So you can choose those wisely, and so that they'll contrast and that they'll stand out and that you'll be able to see them. So personally, I will usually start from the very beginning of a design with a particular fabric color, or at least like how dense of a color and whether it's warm or cool in mind. And then I might fine tune that later on depending on where the design and my color palette leads me. But you want to make that decision early in the process so that you don't paint yourself into a corner as far as like, well, I can't use a blue fabric because I've got these blue stitches here that will get lost, and I can't use a white fabric because I've got these white stitches here that will get lost. If you decide on a fabric color earlier on, then you can kind of commit to one or the other of those before you're in too far to be able to delete them and start over. Now, those are my top lessons that I wish I had learned the easy way before I started designing any of my own cross-stitch patterns. What about you? Is there something that you learned the hard way that you want to share so that others don't have to? Put it in the comments and we can all benefit from your wisdom. I am going to be covering a lot more topics about making your own cross-stitch patterns in the near future, so you want to make sure that you subscribe for that, and make sure you're taking advantage of the enormous wealth of wisdom and experience that is the Caterpillar cross-stitch community by finding our Facebook group and following our Instagram. That is all I have for you this week. I do want to thank you so much for watching. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford, and I'll see you next week.